if the prescribing doctor or their staff didn't bother to take the time to educate you on what could happen if you take too much. What does testosterone do? Now you've taken the job of you've taken the job of your testicles away. Your brain says, okay, you're getting this from an outside source now. I can shut down internal production. Why? I'll just spend that energy elsewhere in the body. I can use that energy to make testosterone somewhere else. So your testicles shrink.
Hi, this is Tim Westbrook. Welcome to I Love Being Sober. We talk about life and recovery, mental health, biohacking, alternative therapies, and everything related to living a kick-ass sober life. So let's dig in.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the I Love Being Sober podcast. This show is about building a meaningful, healthy life in recovery, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Today, we're talking about truth in healthcare, hormones in recovery, liver health, and how to think critically about some of the most talked about treatments in wellness and the addiction space. I'm joined by Dr. Ravi Chandiramani, a naturopathic physician and pioneer in integrative addiction medicine with over 20 years of direct clinical experience working with substance use and co-occurring mental health disorders. Dr. Ravi, welcome. I'm grateful to have you here. Looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. You spent decades in this space. What are you seeing now that concerns you the most?
So I think the reason I reached out to you, Tim, is because I've recently opened a clinic in the Air Park, and we're trying to offer some of the more trendy things in the marketplace, right? Mm-hmm. Testosterone replacement, hormone replacement, peptide therapy, medically supervised weight loss, things that would, I think, fall under a general rubric or umbrella heading of biohacking, right? For lack of a better term. And in setting up this clinic and dealing with vendors and kind of understanding who else was offering these things in the marketplace, I started getting really concerned really fast. Mm-hmm. And that's because, it stems from, I've been practicing addiction medicine now for almost 25 years, right? And so I'd detox a patient and they would come into residential and then they would successfully transition into outpatient treatment. And once they were out in outpatient treatment, they had access to kind of go to medical appointments and visit psychiatrists and do medication management through other providers that weren't me. The same concerns, right? That those providers, they're basically a stranger to that person, right? They haven't seen their journey. They don't know their history as it relates to substance use disorders and or mental health issues. And my patient may or may not choose to disclose that to this new provider that they're seeing for something completely different that's not addiction related, right? And it comes up over and over again in pain. So the patient's an outpatient now, and something happens that causes them to be in acute or chronic pain. Mm-hmm. And they end up in front of a provider in either an emergency room or an urgent care setting, or as outpatients in like a pain management clinic, mm-hmm. and they choose not to disclose to that individual that they were recently in treatment, so on and so forth. And now you have a provider that thinks they're just somebody that's coming to see them off the street, doesn't know any of that history, and may very well do something in the course of their standard practice that sets that individual up for relapse.
Right. Understood.
Right. And it's not the provider's fault because the information wasn't disclosed. Right. And there's no great way for an outpatient provider to go into like a database and see that patient was in treatment. They can search the controlled substance record that Arizona requires that we check before we prescribe a controlled substance to a patient and see, okay, they might be able to glean based on like a buprenorphine prescription mm-hmm. that the patient has opioid use disorder. But if they choose not to do that, or things fall through the cracks, or they're rushed, mm-hmm. that may not happen. Right. And now you have a patient that's at risk for relapse. And so when I started doing this kind of trendy stuff, right, what I found was, okay, if I want to serve patients that I have a history with, and I was their treating physician when they were treating for substance use disorders, and they come to me, that's one thing. Because I know the history, same thing. I know the history. I know, what their substances of choice were. I know what kind of co-occurring psychological disorders they've had to contend with. I know their family dynamics. so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be super careful about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And testosterone is a controlled substance,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's going to show up on that database, that Arizona controlled substance database. But what if they go to somebody, just as was the case with that pain management physician, and they choose not to disclose to that individual any of their addiction history or treatment history, and they go to that person and they want to do testosterone and they want to lose 60 pounds and, oh yeah, I want to try some of these peptides I've been hearing about, and right, and very similarly to the concerns that I had when I was dealing with the pain management doc, same kind of concerns. Why? Because at the core, you're dealing with an individual who has, for most of their lives, if not just through their use history, had a default kind of mental state
Mm-hmm.
that said, if X is good, Y is better, right? If 10 milligrams is good, 50 milligrams is better,
Right. 100%.
right?
Mhm.
And so now you're going to, in some cases, some clinics will just have you they'll prescribe some testosterone and you go and pick up your own vial of it at the pharmacy, right? And the same pharmacy will give you the syringes and say, okay, has your doctor explained to you how to use this? And the answer will be yes or no. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, maybe they didn't do it, maybe they had a nurse do it, maybe they had a tech do it, maybe they had an MA do it, who knows, right? And they'll start using it as prescribed because it says it right on the bottle how you're supposed to use it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me start using it that way. 2, 3, 4 weeks. I'm starting to feel 6 weeks in, right? I'm starting to feel pretty good.
Right.
Like my workouts are better.
Uh-huh.
I'm starting to like what I'm seeing in the mirror a little better. My sleep is improved. My mood is improved. I'm less, maybe I'm less anxious or less depressed or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
What if I take double the dose?
That's our, being a person that's newly sober, that's the default. I mean, I can relate to that. Can anybody else relate to that? Yeah, I'm going to take more because
Right.
10 milligrams is good.
10 milligrams is great. So
20 milligrams is going to be
20
better.
milligrams is
I
gonna
want to
be-
feel better.
Exactly right. But now you're in a situation where, particularly if the prescribing doctor or their staff didn't bother to take the time to educate you on what could happen if you take too much,
Right.
what does testosterone do? Now you've taken the job of you've taken the job of your testicles away. Your brain says, okay, you're getting this from an outside source now.
Mm-hmm.
I can shut down internal production. Why? I'll just spend that energy elsewhere in the body. I can use that energy to make testosterone somewhere else. So your testicles shrink.
Mm-hmm.
80% of the volume of a man's testicle is either sperm or sperm-producing cells.
Mm-hmm.
If you are taking the testosterone and you're taking too much of it,
Mm-hmm.
it's going the testicles will shrink.
Mm-hmm.
You will become infertile as a direct result. If you're not taking something like human chorionic gonadotropin or HCG along with it, you're not preserving your fertility, and your testicles will shrink because the brain says, oh, we don't need to spend that energy anymore. What about if you take too much testosterone? More of it's going to get converted to estrogen. More of it's going to get converted to DHT.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have a greater likelihood of DHT-induced baldness
Mm-hmm.
than you did before.
Mm-hmm.
And with all that extra estrogen around, you're more prone to mood swings, right? Irritability, sleep issues, mood issues, breast tenderness, and breast enlargement in men, called gynecomastia.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the person that prescribed it or their staff bothered to take the time
Right.
to educate the patient on what could happen if you take too much.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what will happen if you take too much.
Right.
Same thing applies to these peptides.
Yeah.
What I quickly learned, Tim, in starting to prescribe these and talking to people that are in recovery, is that there are people out there today in Scottsdale and in the greater Phoenix metropolitan area that are selling peptides to people in early recovery and other people
Mm-hmm.
that are not approved by the FDA, that are perhaps research-only peptides. And it says it right there on the bottle, research-only peptides,
Mm-hmm.
coming in from other countries, potentially contaminated with God knows what, definitely not 98% pure, which is what the FDA requires before it could put something in the commercial production.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, the FDA has had to clamp down on these compounding pharmacies and other entities because people are developing serious side effects.
Mm-hmm.
right? Immune system issues because the immune system's trying to fight off whatever's contaminating the peptide. And a variety of other complaints. You can go on the FDA website right now and look it up.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people today doing this and getting away with it. And I feel like people in early recovery and everyone else, but particularly people in early recovery, because of that default thinking,
Mm-hmm.
are particularly vulnerable to, I'm not going to call them predators, but they certainly aren't practicing like scrupulous practitioners would.
Yeah, you said earlier, you're talking about people early on in recovery going and seeing another physician outside of a physician that's not aware that they're in recovery, that's early on in recovery. And I've seen that. I've seen it a lot.
Yeah.
I can say for myself, has anybody gone to see a physician and didn't disclose that you're in early recovery? Has that ever happened? I have. I remember when I had shoulder surgery, I was about a year and a half sober. I didn't disclose to my surgeon that I was in early recovery, and he prescribed, I don't know, it was like Norco or hydrocodone or something like that. It was a slippery slope. Thankfully, I was well connected to my sponsor, well connected to the 12-step program, and I was able to keep it together. And but it was definitely a slippery slope, and I see it's. Sometimes you just don't think it's necessary, right. and if they don't directly ask you the question,
right.
like, hey, what do you have a history of addiction? They're not going to ask that question,
no,
because it's usually not appropriate to.
That's right.
Yeah. So I think it's working with a doc that knows your background and knows your history is so important. And then also doctors can go and see their history, but a lot of times they're supposed to, but a lot of times they don't.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly what I'm finding more and more. And so, part of like what we're doing with this clinic is saying, okay, doing addiction medicine and treating people with substance use disorders and co-occurring psychological disorders. It's my bread and butter. It's all I know. It's all I've ever done in medicine, right? So I tell my brother and other people that are doing marketing for the clinic, I feel like we should go out and talk to people in early recovery and talk to treatment centers and talk to outpatient providers and say, hey, it's perfectly fine for you to be interested in these trending modalities. It's perfectly fine for you to be interested in biohacking. Perfectly fine for you to want to be involved in creating a better version of yourself. In fact, that's part and parcel of what you're doing in your recovery journey, right? So it can parallel what you're doing in recovery. And I think it's great for people to be interested in kind of how do I address my nutrition and how do I exercise without hurting myself when maybe I haven't been exercising routinely for years because I was in my disease. And it's great, in fact, for them to talk about what supplements make sense and what supplements don't make sense and what might be overkill and what might not be. And the spiritual piece and kind of continuing to work the steps and working with your sponsor and removing the toxic people from your life and all the things that we tell people to do. All of it's great. But as it relates to the trending stuff that's out there, the peptide therapy, the medically supervised weight loss, particularly when that medically supervised weight loss involves the prescription of controlled substances that are stimulants,
right?
Like phentermine. Particularly when that's the case, the testosterone replacement therapy. I just think that maybe people in early recovery and even kind of intermediate recovery, because to your point, it can be a slippery slope when you have 1 year sobriety as it can be when you got 15 years sobriety.
100%.
Right? I just feel like if you want to explore those things, just do it in the safest way possible. And the safest way possible may be seeking out professional assistance in determining what's right for you and what's not right for you with somebody who actually has some addiction training, experience, and background.
Yeah, and on that note, I was seeing a concierge doctor for a while, naturopath and an MD, and he knew I was in recovery. And my appointments with him were like 3 or 4 hours long. And he was like, you should probably go on like Adderall or something like that. And I was like, no, definitely not. Because I like stimulants. I like stimulants and alcohol. That's kind of my drug of choice.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not doing it. And then he said, well, what about Vyvanse? And I was like, no. Because when I stopped doing, so when I was married in 2008, my wife at the time, she said, if you ever do cocaine again after, lots of shenanigans, she said, if you ever do cocaine again, I'm going to divorce you. And then, so I didn't realize this until after I got sober. Probably within a month of that time, I went to the doctor and said, I need something for my ADD. And so I started taking Vyvanse, and of course I'm abusing it. And I'm taking Vyvanse and Adderall and switching back and forth. And then when I get sober, I realize I'm still taking Vyvanse, but I realize like I don't need this. So I finished the rest of the prescription. Of course, I couldn't just toss it.
No, God forbid.
God forbid. So I took it as prescribed, but then I quit and I was done with Vyvanse, and I haven't done it since. And so when I go and see this concierge doctor and he's telling me that I should consider, I'm like, I'm not, I talked to my sponsor about it. I prayed, meditated, all the things, and I'm not on it, and I haven't been on it, and I'm not going to get on it because I don't need it. What I need is I need prayer. I need meditation. I need breath work. I need exercise. I need to get enough sleep. I need to eat the right food. Like those are all the things that I need to do. I need to cold plunge. I need to hop in the sauna. Like those are all the things that I need to do in order to keep my ADD at bay. And that works much better.
Absolutely.
For me.
And to your point, right? I tell patients, I tell everybody actually, we have this kind of society induced belief system, right? That doctors, there's this hierarchy, and there's a doctor and they went to school for all these years and they got this degree and fancy letters behind their name. And so if they tell you to do something, you should do it, right? Or if they give you a certain piece of advice, then it's always in your best interest. And that is absolutely not true, right? Patients are a doctor's customer. And that customer has the right to fire that doctor and find another doctor. And so if, to your point, like if I'm in a situation where I have a concierge doctor and 90% of what I'm doing with this doctor jives with me, and I feel like I'm on the right course, and their advice seems to generally be in my best interest, and and I'm generally 90% happy with this individual guiding my healthcare or being on my healthcare team, because that's really what it is. They're just one person on your team, and guess who decides to make the team? You do. Guess who decides who's on your team? You do, and nobody else gets to. So if the 10% that I don't like is because every third visit I go in to see this provider, he tells me I need to be on Vyvanse, then that 10% may be enough to go find somebody else to do the 90%. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Right? Because even if it's happening every third visit, if it's not in your best interest, and if you've repeatedly expressed to this individual that you do not wish to be on controlled substances, or that you have a historical issue with stimulants, and you do not wish to be on prescribed stimulants, and yet every third visit they go back to their notes and say, have you considered Vyvanse or Adderall? Either they're not listening to you, or they really don't have your best interest in mind, even if 90% of the time you seem to be happy with them. So I tell that to everyone. You are perfectly within your right to determine who's on your healthcare team, and if an individual was working for you but isn't working for you anymore, kick them off your team.
100%. I like that. Yeah, it's the awareness, being aware, paying attention, asking questions, seeking outside assistance other than that specific doctor, in my experience anyways. So speaking to peptides, you said earlier that there are peptides that are not
FDA approved.
Not FDA approved,
Yes.
or ones that are made in China or India or somewhere else. What do you think? I want to ask you about the risk of peptides, and then the risk of taking peptides that are not produced or not produced here in the U.S., that are produced in India, or that you buy off of the internet somewhere. So what's the risk of buying peptides that are from some guy.
Right. So
Or from the internet somewhere.
Right. So
because you heard that it might help you build muscle.
That's right. Right. Great question. Thanks for asking it. So, I mean, in this country and in Canada and in some other countries, we have really rigorous standards by which a prescription pharmaceutical substance is allowed to be on the market and made commercially available.
Mm-hmm.
And in most cases, those include clinical trials on human beings, right? There's a phase 1, a phase 2, and a phase 3, typically a clinical trial, before the FDA will review an application for something to become FDA approved. And it's really, really rigorous. They're looking at, right, how much of that substance is actually in that pill, tablet, capsule, vial, etc., right? Is there anything in it that's not supposed to be in it? Is it producing the desired effects? Is it causing side effects that that the manufacturer is either aware of or not aware of? Does it jive with the report that we got from the manufacturer based on their funded clinical trials or not? Is there discrepancy? In the case of purchasing peptides from countries that do not follow this rigorous methodology in bringing pharmaceuticals to the commercial marketplace, you run the risk of injecting something into yourself that is not pure, that has impurities that people in this country would simply not allow to be in the bottle, that's contaminated with God knows what. We ran into the same thing with Ayurvedic supplements that were coming out of India about 10 years ago, right? There were heavy metal contaminants in it, and it was causing individuals who were taking these Ayurvedic supplements regularly to develop symptoms of heavy metal poisoning. And it wasn't until the people actually took what they were taking, took it to a lab and broke it down and looked to see what was in it, that they figure out that, products coming from that country did not have the same rigorous, right, approval mechanism to make sure that these things were excluded from the final product. In the very same way, things coming from China or India or Russia or wherever these peptides are coming from, if they're not meeting that same standard that we have in this country and that they have in Canada and some other countries, you could very well be getting something that is contaminated with God knows what, is impure, right? And as a direct result, your immune system, if you have like a hyper-reactive immune system to begin with, it may see those things as foreign substances, and as you continue to take it, launch a formal immune reaction against it.
Gotcha. In your opinion, are peptides appropriate for people that are early in recovery?
It depends on what it is that individual is looking to achieve.
Okay.
Right? So say the individual is looking for, like they're just starting to get into working out again, but everything's rusty, right? They haven't worked out in a while. They certainly haven't worked out consistently in a while, and now they are loading their joints in ways that their joints haven't been loaded in a while. Well, they may experience some stiffness and inflammation and wear and tear above and beyond, right, what somebody that was exercising regularly and consistently might experience. And so there are peptides on the marketplace. There's particularly one called BPC 157, right? Great peptide.
Right.
Fantastic by all accounts. The research behind it, solid, right? The results that you can get by including it into your peptide regimen, fantastic, particularly for tissue healing. Which it would make sense that you would want to include that if you were somebody that, again, was starting to get back into regular and quasi-rigorous exercise. Problem is that it was available, and then we started getting flooded with this stuff from outside the United States, and or compounding pharmacies were starting to just crank it out, and maybe those compounded products didn't meet the same standards as what was commercially available. For whatever reason, the FDA pulled it, right? And now you can still get it, but it's not an FDA-approved product. And so what you're getting, if you're getting it, is likely not being produced in this country.
Interesting. Because
it's not, like compounding pharmacies may not produce it as per FDA guidelines, right? Pharmacies and compounding pharmacies, they can't do it until the FDA reverses its position, whenever that may be. So if you're using it, it's likely not being produced in this country. And then the obvious logical follow-up question would be like, okay, then where is it being produced? And is that one of those countries where historically they've allowed contaminants in their products, impurities in their products, and God forbid things like heavy metals in their products, right? Now, what are the actual realistic odds of that happening? I wouldn't say they're super high, but I'm personally not willing to take that chance, and I would advise my patients accordingly, because I don't really like playing Russian roulette with my body.
So what are some of the peptides that are FDA approved at this time?
There's very few, actually. So, I mean, you can get sermorelin, but you can't get ipamorelin.
The CJC 1295, ipamorelin.
Yep.
And they stopped that one.
Yep.
But sermorelin is comparable.
It is comparable. You still get similar effects with regards to inducing HGH production. But it was better when you could combine sermorelin and ipamorelin together. You got a more augmented effect, right, with regards to pushing HGH endogenous production. Now it's a little less, but sermorelin is still available. Of course, semaglutide, is a peptide.
What's semaglutide?
Semaglutide's Ozempic.
Oh, okay.
Right, which everyone is using for for weight loss. It was the original weight loss GLP-1, but that's a peptide.
What's your opinion of GLP-1?
I think GLP-1s have tremendous promise. They hold tremendous promise. I think what we've been able to see with regards to hemoglobin A1C reduction, reversal of type 2 diabetes risk profiles, cardiometabolic risk profiles, and even what we're starting to see with regards to GLP-1's action on the reward centers in the brain and how that could be useful in the treatment of addiction.
Gotcha.
Right, we're starting, and we're only just kind of started to see a little bit of that. Very little of that iceberg has been revealed, but I think that we're going to find even broader therapeutic applications to GLP-1s as a class. I'm particularly obviously interested in continuing on in the research on how it affects the brain's reward center.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm going to go back to my little agenda here.
Yes.
Okay. Why do you believe truth has become such a valuable and scarce commodity in modern healthcare and addiction treatment?
A lot of the reasons that I've talked about. I think that there are unfortunately a lot of unscrupulous practitioners out there, right? And even though if you're duly licensed and you're practicing in the state of Arizona and you fall under DHS, then you have a code of ethics that you're supposed to adhere to. But even then, with people that are supposedly supposed to adhere to a professional code of ethics, I think there are plenty of unscrupulous providers out there, and that's the people that are duly licensed under DHS. Forget about the whole host of individuals that are portraying themselves or misrepresenting themselves in the marketplace as healthcare providers or practitioners that are not licensed or credentialed to do so. Right. It's just, again, I think people in early recovery are particularly vulnerable for the reasons that we've already talked about. Right. The reasons we've already discussed. I think they're particularly vulnerable, and not that they're stupid or ignorant or naive. Not those things. But just by virtue of the way that the thinking process, some of the default thinking processes, and some of the default kind of patterns of thinking and behavior, just by virtue of that, it causes them to be slightly more vulnerable to whatever snake oil, some of these unscrupulous providers happen to be pitching. And there's a ton of them, and that number is growing, and I don't think that we do enough as a state at the local level or federally to make sure that these people are not causing harm.
How do you think social media has changed patient expectations?
I think social media, ChatGPT, WebMD have changed patients' expectations significantly, because now they can go in and do their own research in minutes prior to their doctor's appointment or psychiatrist appointment or PT appointment, or one of these providers, and I'll use providers in quotes there, who is selling these trendy therapies. They can go in and say, okay, I want the Wolverine stack, right? Not just, hey, I'm interested in losing 40 pounds, toning up, doing it safely, working out safely, but specifically because ChatGPT, right, has said go in and ask for the Wolverine stack.
Right.
And I'm going in and saying I want a Wolverine stack, and unfortunately, not everything in that Wolverine stack is FDA approved anymore, right? But they're going to go in and ask for it by name, much in the same way as this country is one of the only countries that still allows pharmaceutical ads on TV, right? And much in the same way, they'll see an ad on TV and go into a doctor's office and say, I want that drug.
Well, I think there's, we talked about peptides that were not FDA approved. There's still compounding pharmacies out there that are producing or manufacturing or whatever you want to call it, peptides that are not FDA approved.
That's right.
Right.
And they're not supposed to be, right? They're not. The FDA has said, letters went out to every compounding pharmacy, letters went out to every conventional pharmaceutical company. These things are off the list. You may not produce these things. You may not manufacture these things until such time as the FDA reverses its decision,
right?
Which may or may not happen.
So let's go back to one of the core questions I wanted to ask you. What is integrative medicine, and why is it different from traditional models?
Right. So integrative medicine has it's a term that was coined by Andrew Weil.
Okay.
Right. Andrew Weil
from Tucson. Yes.
Started the University of Arizona fellowship program in integrative medicine. He coined the term.
Okay.
And he wrote the books on it, etc. Basically, it means that instead of that, you have to, if you're practicing integrative medicine, you're adhering to a set of principles, and those principles mean that you view the patient as a whole person, not their parts, right? The relationship between you and your patient in integrative medicine is a partnership. Not me saying you're going to take this, and if you don't follow what I say, don't let the door hit you on the way out, right? It is a partnership. You consider as part of your therapeutic armamentarium anything and everything that is evidence-based, right? Not just meds, not just surgery, but anything that has some evidence basis, meaning acupuncture and oriental medicine, which we have great evidence for,
right,
with regards to treating certain pain conditions and other things. Therapeutic diet, amazing. All the stuff we get from nutrition studies, amazing research and evidence. Certain aspects of what we would generally call energy medicine, such as meditation, yoga, all have tremendous, valuable, real evidence behind them in real medical journals. So that if you're going to practice integrative medicine, you consider the totality of the modalities that are available to you to recommend to your patient, as long as there is appropriate evidence, clinical evidence, suggesting that it could be of benefit. There are plenty of things that people recommend that don't have that kind of evidence behind. And in some cases, they're helpful, and in some cases, they could be harmful. But if you're practicing integrative medicine, you don't discount the things that have evidence behind them. You include them in your arsenal.
So how does this model support long-term recovery, not just short-term abstinence?
Well, I think it takes into consideration I want my patients to be in partnership with me. I want them to say, hey, I was researching about X, Y, and Z. What do you think about it? Right? Let's have a conversation about it. I want my patients to say, hey, so-and-so, my sponsor, right? My sponsor is starting to do, starting to talk to people about maybe addressing his low testosterone. Do you think it's a good idea for me to get tested, right? I want them to say, what do you think about meditation and yoga? Do you have places that you can refer me to? Because if they are practicing holistic recovery, and I don't know if that term exists or not, but if it doesn't, it should be a term, right? Holistic recovery, in my estimation, means that you are devoting adequate time, right, within your recovery journey. You're devoting adequate time to your spiritual health, your physical health, your psychological, mental health. all of these bodies within
Mental,
your body,
emotional, spiritual, physical, all
right, all of it.
All of it.
Doing and you're devoting equal time to these things,
Right.
Because devoting too much time in one bucket and forgetting about the others may not be in your best interest. So, are you constantly evaluating? I love the idea of toxic relationships because it's really important, and particularly in early recovery, but even in intermediate and long-term recovery. Right, we all enter into these relationships with people constantly, and online, and online you may not even ever see the person face to face, and you're still in a relationship of sorts with that person. So, is that relationship serving you? It can only be yes or no. It can't be gray. It's a black and white answer. Is that relationship serving your recovery? It's a yes or no question. It can't be gray. If the answer to either of those questions is no, and you're not seriously considering how to extract yourself from that relationship, then that will ultimately be problematic. It may not be today, it may not be a month from now, it may not be 6 months from now, but at some point down the road, that it will be problematic. And it may, in and of itself, serve as a trigger to relapse. And so constantly evaluating the relationships that you have, not only with human beings, but with people, places, and things. Right? Your workplace. This notion that, and we see it all the time, you see it all the time in treatment, right? Yeah. Person comes into treatment and basically the vast majority of their professional career has been in bars and restaurants. Right? We all are well aware that substance misuse is rampant in these environments, right? And so that aftercare plan, once the individual is left to their own devices again and falls out of that protective bubble, when left to their own devices, if that aftercare plan does not, consider the fact that going back into that environment, even though it may pay really well, maybe you're like the best server that restaurant has ever had, and you walk out with $2,000 in cash every night that you're a server. Great. But what if re-entering that potentially toxic environment is the only trigger that you need in order to relapse? And so a good aftercare plan certainly takes that into consideration, and I think it should.
Yeah, Ben Hardy wrote a book, Dr. Benjamin Hardy wrote a book called Willpower Doesn't Work. And I mean, it's speaking to environment. I mean, really, in my experience, everything has to change when a person gets sober. New eating habits, new sleeping habits, new exercise habits. They pray, meditate. They do a gratitude list. New hobbies, new interests, potentially a new workplace. I mean, because it's everything that I did before I got sober supported my drinking and drug use.
Right.
And so it's just the path of least resistance is always to go back to what you were doing before.
That's right.
And willpower doesn't work. If you're around people, it's like they say, if you're at the barbershop, you're going to get a haircut.
That's right.
I mean, it's just going to happen. Okay, so I want to switch gears here.
Yeah.
I want to talk about hormones.
Yeah.
So hormones, hypogonadism, and recovery.
Yeah.
So why should hormone levels be part of the standard diagnostic workup for people recovering from substance use disorders?
So, I've been practicing a lot. I've treated 25,000 addicts and alcoholics in my career in multiple states, right? And a while back, I used to just do routine blood work, just like a CBC and a chem panel and thyroid maybe, and in addition to what we were already doing with urine screening and stuff. And it occurred to me, particularly with opioid use disorder, right? More so than with any other substance use disorder. Opioids are so potent that they directly affect your hypothalamic pituitary thyroid adrenal gonadal axis, HP tag, right?
Okay.
They directly affect those glands and master controlling glands that are along the midline of your body, with the exception of your adrenal glands, which sit on top of your kidneys, right? And your gonads, which are slightly offset from midline, but they affect every one of those things. And so as it relates to how opioids affect the gonads, they directly suppress production of testosterone in men and estrogen and other reproductive hormones in women. And women need testosterone as well. Right? So the opioids directly suppress production in both genders, in both biological genders, right? So I started testing for it in both men and women, in addition to what I was already doing in terms of routine testing. And what I found come up over and over again, particularly when the individual's primary substance of choice was opioids, was some degree of suppression. And these were young people, like in their 20s, right? Young people, 20s, early 30s, should not have those levels, should not have levels that low of their primary reproductive hormones. So the only thing you could attribute it to, if there wasn't family history of it or some other organic reason for why that should occur, is the fact that what they were taking, right, with regards to the substance of choice, was directly causing it. And so we started diagnosing it and treating it, right? And if I'm going to start somebody on testosterone treatment, or if I'm going to start a female patient on estrogen and progesterone treatment and maybe a little testosterone, I think the safest place to do it is in residential treatment, right? When I'm there and I'm seeing them every day, right? It's almost the safest place to begin that process, because it does require fine tuning. As you move along, you're fine tuning it, and so that residential treatment environment provided the perfect little microcosm to do that safely. And what I found was that some of the symptoms that they had that weren't being adequately addressed by some of the other medications they were being provided, and or the yoga or the meditation or the diet or getting better sleep, were resolved once we addressed the low hormone levels. And what that translated to was a greater likelihood of that individual completing treatment.
Gotcha. What do you say to a young man who maybe he's 25 or 30 or whatever, low testosterone due to opioid use disorder?
Yep.
He still might want to have a family. What do you do with him?
So because they are young, right? And as long as they're
because if they start taking testosterone, their body stops making testosterone.
That's right.
Right.
That's
so
right.
That means if they want to have kids,
right,
it's
right,
not going to happen.
Right. In most cases, when you start testosterone treatment, you're committing for life, which is why we hesitate starting men on testosterone treatment until they're a little older, like 40s, 50s.
Right.
Prefer not to start 20-year-olds that want to have families on testosterone at that age. What I would say is, as long as you're off the opioid, right, and that includes buprenorphine or methadone, as long as you're off the opioid, you're not experiencing the same degree of pharmaceutical-induced suppression of your endogenous production. So once you're far enough away from daily use of an opioid that is doing that, your endogenous systems will start working again. What does that mean? That means you really got to start using and taxing the largest muscles in your body, right? Back muscles,
squats,
quads,
deadlifts, power cleans.
Right. The largest muscles in your body, using them actively and taxing them will allow, it sends a signal directly to your brain, which then sends a signal directly to your testicles, start producing testosterone. So I would say let's do that for like 6 months to a year.
Are there peptides? I think I heard you mention HCG,
yes.
Gonadorelin.
Yes.
Are there peptides that someone can say that's younger that could be a first, a first attempt at getting their testosterone up?
Yes. HCG in particular. So across the board, if somebody wants to have children and you've done the other things and you still arrive at a clinical decision that individual would benefit from testosterone replacement therapy, it's almost malpractice in an individual that's still of childbearing age, particularly if they've expressed that they want to have children, to not put them on HCG with the testosterone. The HCG acts as luteinizing hormone in the body. It gives a similar signal to the body. What that means is that it prevents the testicles from shrinking. It keeps those sperm-producing cells around. And because the sperm-producing cells are still around, you're producing sperm, and therefore it prevents infertility. So it's a must for individuals that you start testosterone on that want to have children someday. If they want to bump their testosterone levels and you don't want to start testosterone, then there are other things you can do above and beyond working those large muscle groups in the body that will endogenously bump the testosterone levels. Zinc, arginine. There's particular supplements that you can use that are not these tea-like supplements, right? That might have like what is that? Anyway, there's a variety of exotic ingredients that they put in these supplements that are testosterone-like. And I'm not talking about using those, because those are like testosterone analogs. I'm talking about using particular supplements that are clean supplements, getting on an exercise regimen that's taxing those largest muscle groups in the body, pushing your libido, right? Not more than desiring to have sex, seeking out sex, right? Because that also provides the positive feedback that you require to produce adequate testosterone.
So how now? What about a female? You're speaking to males specifically. Now let's talk about females.
Yeah.
What do you look at when looking at their hormones?
Same thing. So I'm looking at in addition to the routine chemistry, we're doing a comprehensive hormone profile that includes estrogen, but not only E2 or estradiol, which is the highest circulating estrogen in the body, but also the other two estrogens, E1 and E3. We're looking at those as well, estriol and estrone. Look at progesterone. We look at DHEA, which is that mother hormone that the other hormones come from. We look at sex hormone binding globulin to see how much of that they have around. We look at testosterone in females as well. And we might look at other hormones depending on what we're trying to diagnose. But that can give you a really good picture of where the patient is at. Again, in women for whom opioids was their primary substance of choice, very similar patterns exist in terms of suppression of female reproductive hormones. And I like to work, this is where I really like to work with compounding pharmacies. I will actually send, in some cases, a report of that patient's laboratory results, and I'll get on the phone with a pharmacist. And the pharmacist will say, based on these results, I would recommend X, Y, and Z. Almost universally, start low and slow and titrate up. There's no rush. You've diagnosed it. The situation exists. It's correctable for the most part. You don't need to correct it in a week or a month or you can take your time. And hormones are we throw these words around so easily nowadays on social media and ChatGPT and WebMD and whatever else. They are so potent in terms of their chemical messengers, their chemical messaging, and how effectively they're used as the means of cell-to-cell communication. And the endocrine system is so fragile, right? Any little change up or down creates significant ripple effects. And so I'm a low and slow. Let's start you low and slow and see how you do. And if we need to titrate, we'll titrate. And we're going to work with this pharmacist, and we're going to create a plan that's customized for you, and there's no rush.
It's not in hormones. It's not a slow, or it's not a quick fix.
No.
It's very slow.
Right, and
you can't, you shouldn't double your dose.
That's right.
It's like you got to do it slowly.
That's exactly right. And I'm sure you've heard this, and I've told patients this for years, but you don't find yourself in the place that you're in, meaning seeking out professional help for a substance use disorder and or a mental health issue. That didn't happen in a month.
Right.
It didn't happen in a year. It probably happened over the course of many years. At least give us that many years that it took for you to find yourself in this place to get you back to your baseline, right? You can't say, okay, 10 years, I did all this damage, fix me in a month.
Can untreated hormone issues increase relapse vulnerability?
For the same reasons I told you before. What we found is that, before I was testing hormones routinely when running labs on a patient when they were newly admitted into, I don't do this at detox. I wait until they transition into residential care because we can actually have those conversations in a meaningful way. We were seeing more AMAs. And in retrospect, you can look back at the AMAs and say, well, it was because of X, Y. It could have been this, it could have been that, it could have been this variable, it could have been this variable. At the end of the day, it could have just been that the patient wasn't ready, right? But all I can say is when we started testing for hormones routinely and addressing the low hormone status in patients, when we found low hormone status, it made a difference in that the AMA rates went down.
How often do you see hormone levels that are off in this population?
Early in recovery and in residential treatment, if we're talking about individuals for whom opioids was the primary, greater than 50% of the time.
What about people that are just mental health without addiction issues?
If we don't have a direct suppressor of endogenous production like an opioid on board, less.
Okay.
30, maybe 25 to 30% of the time.
Okay.
But the reason is more likely age related than it is opioid related.
Okay, one last question, and then I want to open it up to the audience.
Yeah.
So, what's your opinion on NAD+?
Love it. I think it's great.
For people that are early in recovery.
I think it's okay for people that are early in recovery. It does. Now, you have to have the right person doing it. It can be administered intravenously, intramuscularly, or intranasally. Okay. Intranasally, of course, the least issue with regards to discomfort. When you're injecting it intravenously, if the drip rate is not super slow, you're going to feel pressure in your chest.
It hurt. I've done it.
Right?
Yeah.
You're going to feel a sense of pressure that feels like angina when somebody has, coronary artery disease and they experience that tightness of the chest, angina. It feels a lot like that. When all that you needed to do in order to prevent that was drip it super slow in an appropriate amount of IV fluid. If you put a vial of it in too little fluid, you'll have that same effect, even if you're dripping it slow. So it's about dripping it slow and diluting it adequately. But I think it's safe.
What's the benefit of NAD+?
It's a huge antioxidant in the body. It has direct effects that we could collectively call anti-aging effects on body tissues, blood vessels, the heart itself, other organ systems, skin, and brain, right? And brain health. So that's why it's particularly useful in people. It's really nice to have compounding pharmacies nowadays that can formulate it in an intranasal formulation, because you're not going to have any of that, right? That chest tightening feeling when you do that. I like it. I think it's what I would say is the same things that we've been talking about all morning so far, Tim, apply here, right? What I would like to avoid, what I would like individuals in early recovery to avoid, is this notion that, hey, if I felt really good from the NAD IV on Monday, I'm going to feel even better if I get one on Thursday, right? Or if I get one Monday, Wednesday, Friday. No, you don't. More is not always better, right? That's simply not the case. And so how much you need and how frequently you get it is up to you and your provider. But beware, there's plenty of unscrupulous providers out there that'd be more than happy to sell you more than you need. That's just the facts.
Okay, I want to open it up to questions. Okay, so let's go over here.
I have a question. It's multi-level. If a person, because HCG can be used for weight loss, correct?
Yes.
If a person is using HCG along with, pain management opiates, would you consider that in the same category of what you were talking about, the suppression of testosterone and in their testicles as well? If the pain management opiate is controlled for several years, but using the HCG to lose weight and or a type of Ozempic?
I think that's perfectly fine. I mean, because the HCG dosing is typically, it's really low dose.
Correct.
And the pain management regimen is a stable regimen. It's not going up or down. So the suppressing effects that opioid medication is having on endogenous hormone production is stable as well. If the medication regimen is stable, then the suppression rate is stabilized because you're not ramping the medication up. And so if you introduce then into that equation HCG responsibly for the indication of weight loss specifically, I think it's perfectly safe. I don't think there's contraindication, and I don't think you have to worry about that.
Is one able to do like HCG and an Ozempic type weight loss therapy together?
There are people that are doing that. Typically, so with Ozempic, semaglutide, and Mounjaro, which is tirzepatide, the two primary GLP-1s on the market for weight loss, they have different titration doses. So semaglutide starts at 0.25 and you're maxed out at 2 milligrams. Tirzepatide starts out at 2.5 and you're maxed out between 10 and 15 milligrams. And you titrate over the course of several months up to where it's right for you. Just because your neighbor, right, landed at 15 milligrams of tirzepatide doesn't mean that you're not going to be fine at or 7.5. So it should be individualized to the patient. And so I would say if a patient has been individualized and titrated up appropriately and they're stable on Ozempic, and they maybe have hit a plateau in their weight loss, and you were to introduce a little HCG into the mix, I think that would be perfectly fine, as long as it was done responsibly.
Just one more question. What is the average testosterone percentage for women that's healthy, a healthy level?
So the range for men is all the way up to 1,000 nanograms per deciliter. In women, it's significantly less. So I think if I had a female patient, I would consider them optimized between 400 and 500, and I would consider a male optimized at about 900.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. So my question for you today is, so you talked about basically encouraging your body to naturally produce more testosterone through exercises like back and the major muscles in your body. What other lifestyle changes and changes in general can you make? Like, let's say somebody who typically rots in bed a lot, or people who watch a lot of TV, lounge around. Do those particular lifestyle things affect your natural levels of testosterone? And also, what are some things that also naturally suppress? Like, let's talk about nicotine, caffeine, other hormones. What are things that naturally suppress, and then things that you can do to allow your body to produce more?
It's a great question. So, I mean, there's certainly less evidence for some of these natural interventions for boosting testosterone levels than there is for working the major muscle groups in your body. But what we do know is that there's a link between vitamin D production and testosterone production. So what does that mean? That means that the vast majority of the population in Western civilization is vitamin D deficient. Why are they vitamin D deficient? We don't spend as much time in the sun as we used to. We're in offices with inadequate lighting, or offices that are using fluorescent lighting instead of full spectrum lighting. We are in front of computer screens that are emitting blue light. We're not eating the same way that our ancestors used to with regards to the quality of animal protein that they had access to versus what we have access to. But if you were to do nature immersion kinds of things, right, where you're deliberately exposing yourself to broad spectrum UV light through sun exposure, and if necessary, taking a vitamin D supplement, right, if you're deemed to be deficient on blood work, there is some indication that optimizing your vitamin D levels help with your testosterone levels. There's also some information around your cholesterol and triglyceride levels and testosterone production. So if you're eating the kind of diet, either you have familial hypercholesterolemia, which is going to cause you to have high cholesterol levels to begin with, regardless of your diet, or you have dietarily induced hypercholesterolemia, so you have high cholesterol, high triglycerides, right, high LDL, which is the bad lipoprotein, and not adequate HDL to offset the LDL, that you will likely not be as good of an endogenous testosterone producer as you would be if you had your cholesterol in check and your triglycerides in check. How do you get high triglycerides? Either you have familial hypertriglyceridemia, or your diet consists of too much refined sugars, refined carbohydrates. And so it's absolutely important to address those things in your diet. I would say vitamin D, cholesterol levels, all of the other things that we tell people to do to live well. Do they likely have some influence on your endogenous testosterone production? I would say yes, even though there's not necessarily a medical paper that I saw somewhere. If you're not sleeping well, night after night after night for months or years on end, you're probably not going to be producing as much testosterone as you should be. If you're not eating well, whole foods-based, broad-spectrum, nutrient-rich diet, then you're probably not going to be producing as much testosterone as you should be. If you're highly stressed and your cortisol level is up all the time, and you're not taking active steps to manage your stress levels, either through extricating yourself from toxic relationships, places, or things, or whatever the case may be, your work, right, whatever it is, then you're probably not producing as much testosterone as you should be. So all of those other fundamental, right, lifestyle things are definitely at play, whether or not there's a placebo-controlled trial that says so. You're welcome.
Hi there.
Hi.
Thank you for being here.
Sure, my pleasure.
So I have a few questions. Well, first of all, I want to just say that it is so refreshing and comforting knowing that addiction doctors do exist. And having one that's as open as you are, and being able to have a physician that recognizes that in recovery, so many different things change. And so I just thank you
Sure.
for doing what you do. I think that we often feel when we go to different doctors after, well, first of all, actually, sorry, is it true that patients can't use the same doctor that they used in treatment in like outside or after treatment is done? That's not true, as long as we seek, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I saw plenty of patients as outpatients. And I think the best psychiatrists do it all the time, right? So psychiatrists are contracted with treatment centers, and then they have their own private practices. And more often than not, as long as it's geographically it works for the patient, that same psychiatrist will be their outpatient psychiatrist and continue the same medication management. Yeah.
I was actually told that was not allowed at another place I went to. So I just thank you for the clarification on that. But going back to it being awesome that addiction doctors do exist, I feel like more often than not, we feel kind of categorized and like there's, perhaps a stigma about med seeking when we get out of treatment because we're addicts. Even though it might be something, like you said, that truly does help us maintain our sobriety long term. Another thing is like, we're here to work on ourselves, to get sober, to stay sober, to learn and be educated about our disease, our mental health issues, and that sort of thing. And we just want to enjoy life again. And so, I feel like we need addiction doctors who understand our real needs so that we don't feel shame.
Sure.
When we get out, and integrative medicine is absolutely wonderful.
Fantastic.
So, so this is the last part of my question. So another thing that you mentioned is GLP-1 for weight loss or the like. I have personally gained about 25, 30 pounds since getting sober.
Is it okay if I ask what your substance of choice was?
Alcohol.
That makes perfect sense then.
And I'm eating tons of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to limit it, but my body craves it.
Absolutely.
And, it's kind of something I feel like I can't turn off.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Seroquel doesn't help
right.
with the munchie aspect. But,
that's right. Yep.
So I just feel like if I can get my weight under control now that I'm sober, and I feel awful because I'm heavy, and heaviest I've ever been in my entire life, and that includes pregnancies. So I definitely think that that's going to help a lot. So it's good to know that we have an addiction doctor who actually understands that, which will alleviate depression and anxiety and all those things. Another last question, in terms of hormone treatment for women, what changes when a woman is in premenopause and getting sober? So I got sober, and now I'm having to deal with being premenopausal, and it is awful. It is awful, and it definitely it impacts my body, my mind, and I just wonder how hormone stuff will.
Great questions. What I would say is I'll address the GLP question first, right? So in addition to GLPs for weight loss, what you're also trying to fight is carb cravings, right? Carbohydrate cravings, and right, if your alcohol use pattern was like most people, meaning you generally started using at the same time every day and you ended at the same time every day, and let's just use the example of the barfly, right? Shows up for happy hour at 3:00. The bar stool has his butt imprint in it because he always sits at the same stool, and he's going to order beers and shots until the end of happy hour, 6:00, 3 to 6, okay? Every day, 7 days a week. And you pull that person into treatment, and you don't address the fact that subconsciously their brain expects a bolus of sugar, glucose, between 3 and 6 p.m. every day. And if they don't get it from booze, they're going to get it from something else. If you don't restructure what's in your house to remove rapidly absorbed refined carbohydrates from your immediate environment without you even knowing it or planning to do it, you're going to beeline for the things that get absorbed most quickly, because your body it's so intuitively intelligent that it will do all this without seeking your approval. And so what we do commonly is introduce a supplement while individuals are still in residential treatment called L-glutamine. L-glutamine comes as a powder, and you just mix it into a smoothie or have it as a, on its own in whatever your water or your juice or whatever. L-glutamine directly affects carbohydrate cravings, and it curbs them. And it's a readily available supplement. You can get it on Amazon, right? That's one of the very first things we do. Vanadium is another mineral. It's a lesser mineral. It's non-essential. That's another thing that naturally curbs carbohydrate cravings. There are also some botanical products that naturally curb carbohydrate cravings. We use all of these things first. If at the end of the day we still have an individual that, despite using all of these things for several months, is having a difficult time and is still having those acute carbohydrate cravings and is still putting weight on, then we might, move to phase 2. Phase 2 may or may not include a GLP-1, but it kind of needs to be holistic, right? And I use this term over and over again. The approach needs to be holistic. You got to consider your exercise. You got to consider your stressors. You got to consider what's in your pantry, right? What's in your pantry and fridge. You might have to revamp all of that, but GLPs can certainly be part of it. To answer your hormone question, premenopause, right? In order to be diagnosed menopausal, you have to not have had a period for a year. In some cases, the diagnosis, we wait for like 16 months to make the diagnosis, just to make sure. But before that even happens, a woman will begin experiencing decreasing levels of all three estrogens, estradiol, estriol, and estrone, E1, E2, E3, as well as progesterone. And because of that, testosterone will follow, right? So all three will start to decrease. And premenopausal symptoms, particularly the vasoactive premenopausal symptoms that come, hot sweats, difficulty sleeping, right? That kind of stuff. It may be as easy as introducing in some low-dose progesterone to manage the vasoactive symptoms without having to go into an estrogen replacement strategy right away. Now, there was, until very recently, the FDA just kind of reversed its position. Providers were dissuaded from starting women on hormone replacement therapy for fear of inducing breast cancer and other cancers of reproductive organs in women. Integrative and functional medicine providers and naturopaths knew this to be incorrect all along, and so we were doing it. Now the FDA has reversed its position formally to say that was based on either faulty science or an incomplete understanding that we now have. And as a result, we are now recommending that providers, when they diagnose an individual patient, recommend HRT. And so if you are experiencing premenopausal symptoms, it may be as easy as having a discussion with your provider and introducing in some progesterone for now. But once the laboratory study demonstrates, right, beyond a question, that you're experiencing decreasing levels of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, and probably DHEA, it would be worth having a conversation on comprehensive HRT. And again, now the FDA says, do it.
All right, this is good information. I wish I knew some of this stuff when I got sober about some of the supplements, because I gained like 20 pounds, and it was cake, pie, ice cream, Jolly Ranchers, like anything I could get my hands on. I mean, I was eating it up, and I gained 25 pounds or so.
It's extremely common, right? Yeah. Extremely common.
Okay, we got one last question over here.
Sorry, I just had a question. As a young trans woman, I'm curious what your thoughts are on hormone replacement therapy as it relates to recovery from alcoholism and mental illness.
So HRT for me is very individualized, right? So what I would say is that have you had comprehensive blood work done that includes for all of the hormones? So and there's a provider that's working with you in that regard, right? Yes. With regards to the hormone. So it's really individualized. I think that if I'm looking at a picture that has a really good objective analysis of your hormone, right, status, and that's just a Polaroid picture. I need the symptoms. So I need to be in front of you and say, what are you experiencing symptomatically, right? Is X, Y, and Z. it's important to treat the person sitting in front of you, not a piece of paper.
Yeah.
So I take those symptoms, match it to the blood work,
Okay.
create a customized treatment plan.
Okay. So you're saying it's very individualized. It's like
It has to be. I don't know any other way to do it. Just like I've never met two opioid addicts that were the same, two alcoholics that were the same, right? Everyone needs an individualized treatment plan.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Okay, so now we are coming to the end of our time here. Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
I think I had a lot of fun. I really appreciate the opportunity. As you can tell, I'm passionate about discussing these things and educating patients and making sure they're not getting duped right out there in the marketplace. It's unfortunate that not everyone has the same ethics and principles. I just want to make sure that you all know that there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. And being interested in trending therapies and modalities is great. Understanding the promises and pitfalls associated with them is really important.
Great. Awesome. Well, Dr. Ravi, I appreciate you. Thank you for your time. How can people connect with you, learn more about you, or do you want to talk about your clinic?
Yeah, so we just recently started a clinic in the Air Park in Scottsdale called Integrated Lab and Health, and basically that's what we're doing. We're doing the diagnosis part, the lab stuff on the front end, so that the labs can inform the treatment plan, right? Because they're very individualized and everyone's needs are different, and so we're spending as much time as we need with our patients, creating those customized plans, helping them navigate this confusing world of therapies that are out there, understanding what they're really wanting to do, and then making sure that if it's something that falls within our purview, that we can help them do it safely. Integrated Lab and Health, it's integratedlabtest.com is the website. You'll likely run into my brother over there who manages the operation and kind of sets all the appointments. His name is Ro. And yeah, it's, if you want something that I'm uncomfortable doing because I don't feel like it's right for you, or if it's something that's out of my purview because I know what I am and what I'm not, and I don't pretend to be a psychiatrist, and I don't pretend to be a surgeon, and I don't pretend to be anything that I'm not, I'll refer you to the right person. But my little black book of preferred providers that I've collected over 23 years of practice in Scottsdale is comprised of ethical providers in their specialty fields that understand and have worked with people in recovery from substance use disorders, and those are the only people I'll refer to.
Awesome. Dr. Ravi, thank you so much.
Yes,
Let's
sir.
give it up for Dr. Ravi.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll do this again sometime.
Yeah, good stuff.
Thanks so much for listening to I Love Being Sober. I hope you got something valuable from today's episode. And if you're looking for more resources on recovery, mental health, or any of the therapies we talk about, head over to camelbackrecovery.com. You can find more episodes, blog posts, and ways to connect. Until next time, take care of yourself, keep growing, and keep living a kick-ass sober life.